Imagine this. A young black woman steps into Jefferson High School on her first day of teaching. She carries nothing but a small satchel and a quiet confidence. The students immediately size her up, especially the notorious group of boys led by Jake Matthews, kids who've driven more than one teacher to quit out of fear. They see her as an easy target, someone they think will crumble under their bullying. What they can't see is the third-degree black belt in karate she earned after 15 years of grueling training, sweat, tears, and extraordinary perseverance. What they also don't know is that she's faced and overcome enemies far more formidable than these arrogant teenagers. This is the story of Alicia Carter, a new teacher whose remarkable inner strength is about to transform Jefferson High and teach everyone there a lesson they'll never forget. Alicia Carter eases out of a little silver car parked in the far corner of the faculty lot. In her hand is a simple brown leather satchel containing a few books and lesson plans she meticulously prepared days ago. Today is her first day at Jefferson High, after relocating from Chicago, the city she's called home for nearly 30 years. She inhales deeply, savoring the cool, fresh air, and feeling a flutter of nerves laced with excitement over her new beginning. At 28, Alicia is still young, but her composed, assured demeanor makes a strong first impression. She wears a sharp navy blazer, her glossy black curls pulled neatly back. Fine features, rich brown eyes shining with confidence, and a gentle, ever-present smile lend her an air that's both professional and approachable. Hidden beneath that humble exterior is a secret few suspect. Alicia holds a third-degree black belt in karate. She earned it through 15 years of relentless training, countless hours of sweat, tears, and moments when she wondered if she could ever rise again. Alicia never flaunts her martial arts prowess, because she knows true strength comes from discipline and self-control, not showing off. She strides down the long hallway of Jefferson High, the click of her high heels echoing on the polished tile floor, each step brimming with hope for what lies ahead. Curious glances follow her as students whisper about the new teacher. Alicia returns their curiosity with a warm nod. Soon she finds her classroom, room 237, a spacious corner room overlooking the sports field. Large windows flood the space with sunlight, creating an airy, vibrant atmosphere. Alicia arranges the desks in a semicircle to encourage discussion and places a small potted plant on the windowsill, injecting life into the otherwise plain room. When the bell rings, Alicia stands at the door to greet each student by name, looking them in the eye and offering an encouraging smile. Most respond politely, surprised but respectful. In her mind, Alicia hopes to teach more than literature and grammar. She wants to impart lessons on self-respect and the courage to face life's challenges. What she doesn't expect is the tension mounting from a group of boys in the back row as the last students file in. Leading them is a tall, well-groomed teenager with a haughty gaze fixed on Alicia from head to toe. That's Jake Matthews, an overindulged kid, along with his sidekicks Dylan Brooks and Ethan Lee, notorious for crushing the spirits of young teachers. But Alicia remains unshaken. She closes the door softly, steps to the front of the room with poise and confidence. Deep down, she knows she's here not just to teach, but to stand up for the values she believes in. The room falls strangely silent. A silent showdown has begun, and though no one knows how it will end, Alicia Carter is more than ready, because she has already faced battles far tougher than this. As soon as Alicia wrapped up her opening remarks, a soft wave of whispers rolled in from the back of the room, where Jake Matthews and his two cohorts sat with challenging smirks. A crooked smile flickered on Jake's handsome but cold face, as if he'd just discovered a new way to amuse himself. From the outside, Jefferson High stood as the pride of Denver's affluent suburbs. Gleaming walls, endless corridors, and honor rolls lining the auditorium that made passers-by marvel. But beneath that polished veneer, the school harbored a terrible secret no display case could hide. A simmering culture of bullying and violence that had festered for years. Sadly, most teachers who tried to confront this problem quit in defeat and despair. Others, fearful of the fallout, chose silence, turning a blind eye to the heartbreak playing out in their own classrooms. Unbeknownst to Alicia, just weeks before her arrival, a veteran teacher of nearly 20 years, Margaret Hill, had taken early retirement after enduring relentless harassment, threats, and emotional terror at the hands of the clique led by Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews, only son of Richard Matthews, one of the region's most powerful businessmen, was a name both students and staff treated with caution. With his meticulously styled dirty blonde hair and towering height, Jake drew attention wherever he went. Even more frightening, though, was how he wielded his family's influence like a weapon. He believed any trouble he caused could be smoothed over with a single phone call to his father. At Jake's side was Dylan Brooks, his lifelong friend. Unlike Jake, Dylan seldom spoke, but when he did, his words carried a bone-chilling coldness. His muscular build made him the group's enforcer, always ready to intimidate anyone who dared resist. Too many vulnerable students had felt the weight of Dylan's brute strength firsthand. The third member, Ethan Lee, was the brains of the operation. A razor-sharp intellect rare for his age. Born into a wealthy Asian-American family and excelling in every subject, Ethan presented as a well-mannered scholar. Yet behind that polished facade, he masterminded most of the group's cruel schemes, keeping his own hands clean enough that teachers, though suspicious, could never pin anything on him. Step by step, these three had seized control of Jefferson High through covert power, spreading fear, doubt, and resignation throughout the campus. New teachers quickly became their favorite targets. What began as seemingly harmless pranks, misplacing keys, altering lesson schedules, swiftly escalated into psychological warfare, vandalized cars, vicious rumors, and veiled threats that drove many educators to resign. When Alicia walked into Jefferson High, she had no idea she was already in Jake's crosshairs. He couldn't stand the thought of a new teacher, especially a young black woman, standing confidently before him, preaching respect and dignity as if daring him to challenge her. At the end of her first class, Jake stood and strolled to the door as if on a casual stroll. As he passed Alicia, he paused just long enough to meet her gaze and muttered, quietly, but loud enough for her to hear, "I hope you know what you're doing, Miss Carter. None of the ones who came before you lasted long." He sneered, then slipped out with Dylan and Ethan, leaving a heavy silence and palpable tension behind. Alicia watched them go, heart pounding, yet her expression remained calm and composed. She realized she had just stepped onto a battlefield she hadn't chosen, but one she was now determined to win. Unlike all those who had come before, Alicia felt no fear. Instead, a fierce resolve surged within her, a resolve to bring real change to Jefferson High, no matter the cost. When Jake's footsteps and those of his cronies faded down the hallway, Alicia stood motionless for a few seconds, her mind racing over the three students who had just left her classroom. Jake's loaded remark and that icy smile were clear warnings that her fight at Jefferson would be far more daunting than she'd ever imagined. Jake Matthews, who had challenged her with brazen arrogance, had long lived in the glare of his family's privilege. As the only son of Richard Matthews, an influential businessman owning a chain of luxury hotels across Colorado, Jake had grown up in a world where wealth and fame were absolute power. From childhood, every mistake he made was swept under the rug, every consequence neatly handled by his father's connections. This relentless coddling convinced him he stood above everyone else: friends, teachers, and even the school's rules. That said, no one could deny Jake's magnetic looks. With his ideal height, chiseled features, and perfectly tousled dirty blonde hair, he effortlessly drew admiring glances from the girls and a mix of envy and respect from the boys. Beneath that charming smile, however, lay a cold, calculating heart, ready to crush anyone who dared stand in his way. By Jake's side was Dylan Brooks, his closest friend, and the muscle behind every act of bullying at Jefferson High. Dylan grew up in a fractured home. His parents divorced when he was young, and without a father's guidance, he became aggressive and impulsive. His hulking football player physique gave him absolute confidence that physical strength was the ultimate authority he could wield at any moment. If Jake launched psychological assaults, Dylan always delivered the physical blows to finish the job. His powerful fists, fierce glare, and merciless threats became a living nightmare for vulnerable students, and even for new teachers still adjusting to Jefferson's harsh environment. Yet the most dangerous member of the trio was Ethan Lee, a handsome, bookish figure who seemed harmless. Ethan came from a wealthy, prestigious Asian American family. Both his parents were prominent lawyers in the city. He had absorbed razor-sharp thinking from an early age, always measuring every step with care. Unlike Jake or Dylan, Ethan rarely took center stage in their mischief. He preferred to stay back, observe, and pull the strings like a seasoned chess master. Ethan's particular menace lay in his subtlety. He never acted directly. Behind every cruel prank or event that drove a teacher out of Jefferson, there was the unmistakable imprint of Ethan's meticulous, cold-blooded planning. His victims often never realized that the quiet, scholarly-looking Ethan Lee was the mastermind behind their misery. Together, Jake, Dylan, and Ethan formed a perfect alliance to dominate Jefferson's social landscape, spreading fear, doubt, and resignation across the campus. New teachers always became their prime targets. What began as innocent-seeming pranks, misplaced keys, messed-up schedules, quickly escalated into psychological terror. Vandalized cars, vicious rumors, even veiled threats that forced many educators to quit. Now, Alicia had become their next target, a young, newly arrived black woman. In Jake's eyes, she was an easy conquest, someone to break and discard like the teachers who had come before her. But there was one thing Jake's gang didn't know. Alicia was nothing like those before her. She had endured bullying since childhood, been backed into corners, and knocked down in countless karate matches before rising to become a third-degree black belt. Her life's challenges and rigorous training had taught her that true strength isn't about inflicting pain, but about patience, calmness, and using one's intellect to overcome adversity. Alicia left the classroom with a serene smile, her steps steady yet light, her mind fully prepared for what lay ahead. Down the hall, Jake Matthews, Dylan, and Ethan watched her go with cold-eyed intensity. They believed they had laid the perfect trap to welcome this new teacher, and that Alicia Carter was their prey to conquer at any cost. But this time, the three most dangerous bullies at Jefferson had gravely underestimated the depth of Alicia's inner strength. A tense, high-stakes, underground battle, the most dramatic in Jefferson High's history, was about to begin. The moment Alicia returned to class the next morning, she could sense a quiet tension hanging in the air. Jake Matthews occupied his usual seat at the back, his eyes fixed on the new teacher with a blend of provocation and scrutiny. Beside him, Dylan sat with arms crossed, head held high, while Ethan discreetly opened a book, but Alicia knew that clever gaze tracked her every move. Ignoring their clear challenge, Alicia stepped to the front with a warm, natural smile. Her eyes swept across the room as she spoke in a gentle, encouraging tone. "Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you this year. Before we begin, let me introduce myself again. I'm Miss Alicia Carter, and I'll be your English teacher." As soon as she finished, Jake's voice rang out from the back, loud enough for the whole class to hear, dripping with feigned innocence. "Oh, great, another enthusiastic teacher. Let's see how long she lasts." A few stifled giggles followed, but were quickly silenced by Alicia's steady gaze. She looked directly at Jake, smile unwavering, betraying no hint of fluster. "Thank you for your input, Jake. But I believe we'll have a rewarding year if we all work together respectfully and seriously." She turned calmly away, as though making an entirely ordinary remark, giving Jake no opening for further dissent. Surprised by her composure, Jake's brow furrowed in annoyance. Dylan let out a low grunt, about to speak, but Ethan subtly signaled him to stay silent, reminding his friends this was only the opening move. Tension eased slightly, and Alicia launched into her first lesson with special passion, weaving meaningful real-life stories into the literature discussion. The rest of the students gradually relaxed and began to participate as if they'd known her for years. Still, throughout the class, Jake and his crew continued their covert provocations. When Alicia asked a question, Jake deliberately gave sarcastic, mocking answers. Dylan whispered with his neighbor to create distractions, and Ethan offered helpful comments designed to pull others off task. Each time, Alicia skillfully diffused the disruption. Never drawn into their taunts, she used constructive, gentle but firm remarks to regain control. When Dylan intentionally dropped his textbook with a loud thud to interrupt her, Alicia simply offered a light smile and said, "Thank you, Dylan, for reminding us that sometimes we need a little interruption to practice patience." Her response, soft yet pointed, left Dylan momentarily speechless, as if he'd just been lightly struck and couldn't retaliate. Ethan's brow twitched, recognizing that this time they couldn't so easily shake the new teacher's resolve. The period ended without any major incident, but Alicia knew this was only a small test. Those three weren't going to stop here. As Jake rose to leave, he passed her desk once more. He said nothing this time, but his eyes flashed with anger and determination. Dylan and Ethan followed, throwing one last warning glance before exiting. Once the door clicked shut, Alicia exhaled, her heart racing from holding back her frustration. But she quickly composed herself, smoothing her blazer and gathering her materials. She understood something crucial. Staying calm today was just the first step in a long battle. And her opponents weren't only Jake's arrogance, Dylan's muscle, or Ethan's cunning plots, but an entire system too accustomed to silence and endurance in the face of injustice. Still, Alicia didn't feel alone in this fight. She knew she was standing up not just for herself, but for the dozens of students who, every day, quietly endured bullying in this seemingly peaceful school. And that knowledge gave her all the strength she needed to face whatever lay ahead. The moment the classroom door clicked shut behind the three boys, Alicia eased into her teacher's chair, a rare look of deep reflection crossing her face. Jake's arrogant posture, Dylan's brute aggression, and Ethan's cold, calculating stare. Each had stirred memories in Alicia she thought long buried, memories she'd worked so hard to keep at bay. Alicia grew up in Chicago's Englewood neighborhood, a place where hope rarely shone. Cracked, litter-strewn streets, graffiti-tagged houses, and the wail of police sirens every night were the backdrop of her childhood. There, Alicia was an easy target for gangs of bullies, because she was small, shy, and dared to dream of something better. There were days she came home bruised, arms scratched, eyes red from tears of pain and helplessness. She never forgot the look of anguish in her mother's eyes, or her father's awkward but heartfelt reassurances as he tended her wounds. "Sweetheart, one day you'll be stronger than anyone who tries to bring you down." Then, on a freezing October afternoon, her parents did something Alicia never imagined they could. They scraped together their meager savings to enroll her in karate classes at a small gym a few blocks away. It strained the family budget. Her dad was a factory worker, her mom a janitor, but to them it was the only way to help their daughter stand tall in a world determined to knock her over. Those first lessons were pure torture. Frail and uncoordinated, her weak punches and stumbles made her the class laughingstock. Alicia wanted to quit each time she came home battered and bruised, but her parents' hopeful eyes wouldn't let her. Bit by bit, under the firm yet caring guidance of Sensei John Evans, whom Alicia came to respect like a teacher and second father, she learned that karate wasn't just about fighting. It was a journey to find inner strength, discipline, and an unbreakable spirit. She channeled every ounce of her past pain into her training, transforming from a fragile girl into a resilient young woman, strong in body and mind. Years later, Alicia stood on the dojo mat to receive her third-degree black belt from Sensei Evans himself. His eyes glistened with pride, and Alicia knew her parents grinned with joy because their little girl had become more powerful than any bully who dared cross her path. Yet those martial skills were never tools of revenge. Alicia understood better than anyone that true mastery lay in self-control, in calm perseverance, and in the quiet strength that weathered life's storms. It was that inner power that kept her standing through the darkest years, and that would allow her to remain composed in the face of Jake's arrogance and his friend's schemes. Sitting now in her silent classroom, Alicia inhaled deeply and smoothed back her hair. Those bitter memories were inseparable from who she was, and she would never let a single student at Jefferson endure the kind of pain she once suffered. For Alicia Carter, this fight was not just about defending herself. It was a battle for the dignity of every vulnerable child, for the safe, supportive learning environment she believed every student deserved. And in this fight she was never truly alone, because, as she had learned, real strength springs from persistence, courage, and the resolve to stand up for what's right, no matter the odds. Bitter memories still flickered in Alicia's mind, and she knew perfectly well that today's challenge from Jake and his cronies wasn't an isolated incident. Bullies always find ways to ratchet up the pressure little by little, and this time would be no exception. Sure enough, in the days that followed, Jake Matthews' crew stepped up their game, determined to back Alicia into a corner. They escalated from petty distractions to carefully calculated, sophisticated attacks designed to harm her and undermine her credibility as a young teacher. One frigid Monday morning, Alicia discovered that her carefully maintained car had been slashed. Long, deep gashes etched along its side, a clear warning. Faced with her vandalized vehicle, she felt silent. Rage surged, but she swiftly composed herself, pulled out her phone, and documented every mark with care. She knew that reacting impulsively would only gratify whoever was pulling the strings. That very evening, a social media profile under the name Alicia Carter appeared out of nowhere, posting vicious insults and expertly doctored images meant to smear her reputation. Within hours, the fake account had spread like wildfire among the students, fueling gossip throughout the school. Curious, judgmental, even contemptuous stares trailed Alicia down the hallways of Jefferson High. Alicia felt the weight of mounting pressure, but she remained unshaken. With remarkable calm, she quietly reported the incidents to the administration and collaborated with the IT team to have the fraudulent account removed. She meticulously saved every piece of evidence: screenshots, suspicious messages, building a solid record for the long battle she knew lay ahead. They didn't stop there. Ethan, the covert strategist behind the group's schemes, launched an even more insidious campaign, planting false rumors about Alicia's past in Chicago. Whispers spread like wildfire that she'd run afoul of the law, fleeing to Denver to escape her mistakes. Though utterly baseless, these lies planted seeds of doubt and suspicion among both students and some colleagues, isolating Alicia further within the school. Jake, Dylan, and Ethan had formed an unbreakable alliance to assault Alicia's spirit. Jake leveraged his family's influence to propagate the rumors across every classroom. Dylan threatened any student who might stand up for Alicia with physical intimidation, and Ethan, with his unassuming scholar's facade, orchestrated the entire operation with cold precision, leaving no trace for investigators to follow. Alicia understood that these attacks targeted more than just her. They were a warning to anyone who might dare oppose them. But what Jake's gang hadn't anticipated was Alicia's radically different response. Instead of succumbing to anger, fear, or despair like the teachers before her, Alicia met the challenge with unwavering poise. In class, she continued to teach wholeheartedly, greeting every probing glance from students and colleagues with a confident smile. Not once did she allow the tension to influence how she treated her students. Each evening, back in her modest apartment, Alicia opened her laptop and quietly compiled all the evidence: documents, photos, chat logs, methodically organizing every detail. She knew that taking on powerful, wealthy adversaries like Jake and his family required meticulous preparation. She also recognized, more than ever, that this fight could not be rushed. It demanded patience, inner strength, and absolute self-discipline, qualities she had forged through blood, sweat, tears, and painful failures. Alicia was no longer the fragile girl who used to limp home with bruises. She was now a strong, determined woman with an iron will and a resilient heart. And Alicia Carter knew one thing with absolute certainty. Jake, Dylan, and Ethan were making the greatest mistake of their lives by underestimating the inner strength and steely resolve of the woman they were so determined to break. Despite the ongoing pressure from Jake and his crew, Alicia arrived in class each day with calm confidence that only fueled Jake's impatience and made him feel personally challenged. In his mind, Alicia's steadfastness in the face of their psychological attacks was a profound affront to his pride. That Friday morning, Alicia's English lesson began under unusually heavy silence. Outside, dark clouds swept across the sky, casting faint shadows through the classroom windows. Alicia was gently discussing To Kill a Mockingbird, emphasizing its themes of courage and justice, of standing up against wrongdoing even when danger looms. Unwittingly, her lecture struck at Jake Matthews's wounded ego, a boy who'd long believed himself above any moral code. Mid-lesson, Jake suddenly leaned back in his chair and called out clearly, his voice echoing through the room. "Ms. Carter, aren't you just describing yourself? A failure who couldn't land a real job and ended up teaching at this mediocre school." His words cut through the hush like an icy blade. The other students froze, exchanging stunned, anxious looks as they awaited Alicia's response. Dylan snorted with rude laughter, while Ethan watched in silence, a satisfied, cold smile flickering across his lips as the scene unfolded just as he'd planned. Alicia paused for a heartbeat, tilted her head, and locked eyes with Jake. Her gaze was clear and sharp, revealing no anger or fear. A silent tension spread through the room. Then she stepped down from the dais and walked calmly toward the back, where Jake sat, daring her with every glance. "Jake," she said softly but firmly, "I understand we don't always see eye to eye, but perhaps you haven't fully grasped the values of respect and dignity that this book teaches." Jake smirked, stood up, and swaggered toward her, his challenge unmistakable. "What are you trying to teach me, Miss Carter? Someone like you, who do you think you are?" In that moment, the classroom froze in utter silence. Jake loomed over Alicia, using his height advantage as a threat, his eyes trying to intimidate the much smaller teacher. Alicia knew she could not back down. Any sign of weakness now would only embolden Jake and his friends further. Drawing on extraordinary calm, Alicia subtly shifted aside when Jake took a step closer. At the same time, she executed a refined martial arts technique she'd practiced countless times. She gently redirected Jake's forward momentum, guiding his arm to the side so discreetly that no one in the class saw what happened. They only saw Jake lose his balance and stagger oddly. Jake slammed a hand on the nearest desk to steady himself, masking his surprise with forced composure. A few students stifled giggles at the rare spectacle. Jake Matthews, always so arrogant and untouchable, had just been undone in front of everyone. Alicia maintained her serene expression as her voice cut through the tension, soft yet as sharp as a hidden blade. "Jake, sometimes we must fall to learn how to stand taller. I hope you understand that." Jake had no reply. He sank back into his chair, face a mix of anger and embarrassment. Dylan and Ethan exchanged looks of shock tinged with fury. For the first time since they'd begun their reign at Jefferson, they felt genuinely threatened by this seemingly ordinary teacher. When class ended, the students filed out in murmurs and whispers. Alicia quietly gathered her materials, knowing the subtle retaliation she'd delivered was only a warning shot. But it was enough to make Jake's crew realize she was neither weak nor easily broken, unlike the teachers who'd come before her. As the empty classroom settled into silence, Alicia took a deep breath, recognizing that from this moment on, the secret battle between her and Jefferson's three most dangerous bullies had entered a new phase. She also knew they wouldn't relent easily, and she was more ready than ever to face whatever lay ahead. Despite the relentless pressure from Jake and his cronies, Alicia showed up to class every day calm and confident. That only made Jake more impatient. He felt personally challenged. In his mind, Alicia's refusal to crumble under their psychological attacks was a direct insult to his pride. When Monday morning arrived, word of the classroom incident had spread school-wide, but not in the way Alicia expected. As she walked through Jefferson's gates, hushed whispers and sidelong glances from colleagues and students surrounded her. Alicia paused in surprise, then realized this was Ethan and Dylan's latest, more insidious retaliation. Indeed, after Jake's public humiliation, Ethan, the group's mastermind, had proposed a campaign to destroy Alicia's reputation completely. He meticulously crafted a false narrative, exploiting the one thing every teacher cherishes: the community's trust and respect. With Dylan's eager help, Ethan spun a lurid tale. Alicia Carter was supposedly a criminal who'd fled Chicago to escape serious illegal charges. They planted vague but ominous clues, hinting at some dark incident in her past, knowing that no one could resist sensational gossip. By the next morning, rumors had infiltrated every corner of Jefferson High, sowing deep-seated doubt. Fellow teachers began watching Alicia warily. Students whispered behind her back whenever she passed. In an instant, Alicia found herself at the center of a vicious psychological assault she'd never faced before. Dylan, delighted by the chaos he'd helped unleash, fanned the flames by pretending to fear Alicia's dangerous presence, turning his mock terror into a school-wide joke. Ethan took a more reserved approach, staying behind the scenes, quietly monitoring the campaign he'd set in motion. pleased as trust in Alicia eroded. Even Jake, chastened by his earlier defeat, joined the effort, this time more subtly. He no longer confronted Alicia directly. Instead, he used his family's influence to lend credibility to the savage rumors, because who would suspect a wealthy, powerful boy of fabricating lies about a young teacher? Alicia felt the mounting psychological weight every hour, every day. Each time she stepped into her classroom, the scrutinizing stares transported her back to the bitter days of her childhood, when she'd been the target of vicious taunts. But this time, Alicia wasn't the timid girl she once was. She inhaled deeply, steeling herself to remain composed and strong. Rather than get swept away by suspicion and despair, Alicia chose to stand firm with perseverance and genuine kindness. She continued arriving at school each morning, teaching with unwavering composure and dedication. She refused to react angrily to the whispers or rush to defend herself, because she knew that truth would always outlast lies. What's more, Alicia devoted extra attention to the students who'd long been bullied at Jefferson High. She recognized they now empathized with her more than ever. So she launched after-school support sessions, helping vulnerable students improve academically and build the confidence to stand up for themselves against similar pressures. One afternoon, as Alicia prepared to leave the empty classroom, she saw Jessica Parker, a shy girl frequently teased by Dylan and Jake, waiting by the door, tears in her eyes. "Miss Carter," Jessica whispered, voice trembling. "You're not who they say you are you?" Alicia knelt and gently took Jessica's shaking hands. Her eyes were soft with compassion as she replied, "Jessica, always remember, truth cannot be buried by lies. I'm here because I believe in you, and I will never give up, no matter how hard it gets." Alicia's words seemed to light a spark of hope in Jessica's eyes. In that moment, Alicia realized she was far from alone in this fight. She had vulnerable students counting on her strength to help them reclaim their own self-worth. Deep in her heart, Alicia knew that Ethan, Dylan, and Jake had made a grave mistake thinking they could defeat her with deceit and power. But she wasn't afraid, because she understood that the true victor is the one who holds on to faith and courage, even in the fiercest storm. Despite Alicia's calm and steadfast demeanor in the face of their lies, Jake and his cronies saw it as a direct challenge. Day by day, they realized that their covert schemes, no matter how vicious, still couldn't break her. Finally, they decided on an all-out public attack, a confrontation Alicia couldn't avoid. That Friday was meant to be special in English class. Immigrant student Maria Gonzalez was giving a major presentation about overcoming hardship to adapt to her new life in America. For Maria, a shy Mexican-born girl, this was a momentous occasion. She'd spent weeks preparing, and Alicia had devoted countless hours helping her conquer her fear of speaking in front of others. Just as Maria began in a soft, trembling voice, Jake abruptly stood and cut her off with a mocking laugh. "Come on, who cares about some boring immigrant story?" His words rang cold and sharp, and Maria froze, wide-eyed and terrified. The room went instantly tense. Dylan rose too, face twisted with aggression. "Maria, stop wasting the class's time." Ethan stayed seated, but his cold eyes and sinister smile made it clear he was relishing the chaos he'd helped create. Alicia sprang forward and stood protectively beside Maria, her voice calm but firm. "Jake, Dylan, show some respect. Sit down and let Maria finish her presentation." But Jake only smirked and stepped closer, glaring at Alicia. "And what if I don't, Miss Carter? What are you going to do? A teacher like you has no right to order me around." Dylan moved in next to Jake, and the two large boys loomed over Alicia and Maria. Ethan rose slowly and advanced toward the podium, his gaze challenging. They'd openly declared war, and the classroom was gripped by fear and confusion. Alicia knew she couldn't back down. In front of her stood Maria, shaking with panic, and behind her dozens of students watched to see how their teacher would respond. She inhaled deeply and spoke with unwavering authority. "I'll say this once more. Sit down, now. This is a classroom, not a playground for your disrespect and aggression." Jake lunged, knocking papers off Alicia's desk. That was Alicia's cue. With lightning reflexes, she sidestepped, grabbed Jake's wrist, and executed a deft twist that sent him stumbling sideways. As Dylan charged with brute force, Alicia pivoted and applied a precise wrist lock from her karate training, freezing him in place. Ethan tried to sneak up from behind, but Alicia anticipated him. She spun swiftly and used another controlled technique to unbalance him, forcing him to brace himself against a desk. None of it took more than a few seconds. No punches, no kicks, no serious harm. Yet the entire class watched in stunned awe at Alicia's extraordinary martial skill. Jake, Dylan, and Ethan stood rooted to the spot, shock and fury in their eyes. For the first time, they'd been completely neutralized in front of everyone. Alicia remained poised, her presence commanding as she spoke in a clear, resonant voice. "I never wanted to do this, but you've left me no choice. Disrespect and aggression have limits." A hush fell over the room, every breath audible as the students absorbed the unforgettable scene. Maria, still trembling, now looked at Alicia with gratitude and respect. Alicia turned to her and gently said, "Maria, please continue your presentation. We're all eager to hear your story." Maria nodded, newfound confidence lighting her eyes. She drew a steadying breath and delivered her speech with strength and clarity she'd never shown before. In that moment, Alicia knew the battle against these bullies had fundamentally changed. She'd stepped out of her comfort zone to protect her student, and in doing so, gained a power greater than anything she'd ever known. Despite Alicia's calm resilience in the face of their lies, Jake and his cronies saw it as a direct challenge. Day after day, they realized that no matter how vicious their covert schemes, they still couldn't break her. Finally, they resolved to launch an outright public assault, one Alicia wouldn't be able to dodge. That Friday held special significance in English class. Immigrant student Maria Gonzalez was scheduled to give a major presentation about overcoming adversity to fit into her new life in America. For Maria, a shy girl from Mexico, this was a landmark moment. She'd spent weeks preparing, and Alicia had poured her heart into helping Maria conquer her fear of speaking before her peers. Just as Maria started in a soft, quivering voice, Jake abruptly rose and cut her off with a mocking laugh. "Come on, who cares about some boring immigrant story?" The cold, cutting words made Maria freeze, wide-eyed with fear and confusion. The classroom tensed. Dylan rose next, face twisted with aggression. "Maria, quit wasting the class's time." Ethan stayed seated but leaned forward with a sinister smile, clearly reveling in the chaos he'd engineered. Alicia immediately stepped between them, standing protectively beside Maria. Her voice was calm but firm. "Jake, Dylan, you will not disrespect your classmates like that. Sit down and let Maria finish her presentation." Jake just smirked and advanced another step, glaring at Alicia. "And what if I don't, Miss Carter? What are you going to do? A teacher like you has no right to boss me around." Dylan moved in to flank Alicia, and Ethan rose and drifted toward the podium, their united front radiating menace. The three bullies had openly declared war, and the classroom crackled with fear and confusion. Alicia knew she couldn't back down. In front of her stood Maria, quaking with panic, and dozens of students watched, waiting for her reaction. She took a deep breath and spoke with unwavering authority. "I'll say it again. Sit down right now. This is a classroom, not a stage for your disrespect and aggression." Jake lunged, swiping at the stack of papers on Alicia's desk. That gave Alicia her opening. With lightning reflexes, she sidestepped, grabbed Jake's wrist, and applied a precise wrist twist that sent him stumbling sideways. As Dylan charged, she pivoted and locked his arm in a controlled hold, freezing him in place. Ethan lunged from behind, but Alicia anticipated him. She spun and used a subtle joint lock to knock him off balance, forcing him to brace against a desk. None of it took more than seconds. No punches, no kicks, no injuries, but the entire class watched in stunned awe at Alicia's extraordinary skill. Jake, Dylan, and Ethan stood rooted to the spot, shock and fury in their eyes. For the first time, they'd been completely neutralized in front of everyone. Alicia remained composed, her presence commanding as she addressed them. "I never wanted to have to do that, but you left me no choice. Disrespect and aggression have limits." The room fell silent, every inhale audible as students absorbed what they'd just witnessed. Maria, still trembling, looked at Alicia with newfound gratitude and respect. Alicia turned to her and gently said, "Maria, please continue your presentation. We are all eager to hear your story." Maria nodded, drew a steadying breath, and spoke with clear strength she'd never shown before. As Maria's voice filled the room, an invisible current of hope rippled through every student's heart. Alicia realized her actions had not only protected Maria, but had lit a powerful spark of courage in those long cowed by Jake's reign of terror. When class finally ended, the students remained seated, reluctant to leave. Then Jessica Parker, the girl who'd been teased mercilessly for her weight, rose slowly, her hands trembling, but eyes shining with determination. "Ms. Carter, I have something to say in front of everyone." Alicia gave her an encouraging nod, while Jake and his two lackeys watched warily. Jessica drew in a deep breath. "I think it's time we stop being silent. Jake and his gang have made us scared and done us harm. I've endured their insults every day, and I know I'm not alone." Jake leapt up, furious, but Dylan grabbed his arm to keep him quiet. They hadn't expected their actions to be the last straw. Now their victims found the courage to stand up. Quiet Marcus Johnson, a timid black student, rose next, his voice clear and resolute. "Me too. They've bullied me all year. They threatened me with moldy drugs in my backpack so I'd take the rap. They even framed Mr. Anderson, our former math teacher, costing him his job." The room erupted. Jake's face went pale. Ethan's cool mask slipped as unease flickered in his eyes. Dylan's fists clenched, ready to fight back, but the look of solidarity on every student's face kept him frozen. "We have clear proof," Marcus continued. "Jessica and I saved messages, pictures, and chats showing Jake, Dylan, and Ethan deliberately ruining teachers' and students' lives." One by one, once silent students stood and shared their own stories of pain and injustice, presenting irrefutable evidence. The horror of Jake's schemes lay bare before the entire class. Jake lost control, screaming, "You're all lying! You can't frame me like that!" But Alicia intervened, her voice colder and firmer than ever. "Jake, this evidence is going to the principal and the police. This is no longer a game. You have hurt too many people, and now you must face the consequences." In that moment, Alicia was no longer just a teacher. She was a symbol of courage and justice. She had given a voice to everyone who had suffered in silence. The classroom door opened, and the principal strode in, flanked by other teachers, eyes grave. Alicia met his gaze and nodded. "Sir, there are serious matters here that need to be addressed immediately." Seeing the students' outrage and resolve, the principal nodded back sternly toward Jake and his friends. "Follow me to my office right now. We will sort this out once and for all." Jake lowered his head. The arrogance drained from his eyes, replaced by shame and helplessness. Dylan and Ethan rose and followed, their heads bowed, under the watchful eyes of every student they had tormented. As the door closed behind them, a wave of relief and pride swept through the room. Alicia turned to the brave students who had spoken out and offered them a warm, grateful smile. In that moment, everyone understood. No matter how powerful fear and oppression may seem, they can never withstand the courage and unity of those who stand together to protect what is right. When Jake and his cronies disappeared behind the door, an unusual silence fell over the entire school. Everyone felt it. What seemed like a finished battle was about to enter a far more complicated phase. After all, no one could forget the name Richard Matthews, Jake's father, a notoriously powerful businessman in Denver who protected his son's misdeeds every time he got into trouble. Just as Alicia had predicted, less than an hour later, a sleek black car rolled up to the front entrance. Richard Matthews stepped out, radiating arrogance and authority in his expensive tailored suit. Minutes later, Alicia was summoned to the principal's office. As she entered, the tense atmosphere was palpable. Richard Matthews sat opposite the principal, his eyes cold and his face flushed with anger. Jake stood silently beside him, head bowed, no hint of his usual smugness. Mr. Matthews rose to his feet, his voice booming with threat. "I've heard my son's version of events. Miss Carter, who do you think you are, humiliating my boy in front of his classmates? If this school doesn't fire you on the spot, I'll sue both you and the district." The principal shifted uncomfortably, clearly unused to confronting such raw power, but Alicia remained composed, looking Mr. Matthews squarely in the eye. Her voice was calm but resolute. "Mr. Matthews, I'm afraid you don't have the full picture. What happened today wasn't simply a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Mr. Matthews snapped. "You're saying I don't know my own son?" "Not at all, sir," Alicia replied steadily. "I'm saying you may not realize the full extent of what Jake and his friends have done over the past months." With that, Alicia placed her laptop on the principal's desk and began to show photo after photo, video clip after video clip, and text message after text message, every piece of evidence she had carefully collected. As each file appeared on screen, Mr. Matthews' expression darkened, shifting from fury to shock, then to stunned silence. Alicia continued in a clear, professional tone. "Sir, this evidence proves that Jake, Dylan, and Ethan have engaged in serious misconduct, bullying classmates, vandalizing property, fabricating and spreading false rumors, even planting drugs to frame our former teacher, Mr. Anderson. These aren't minor misdeeds. They cross every ethical and legal line." The principal glanced at Mr. Matthews, his face stern but determined. "I'm sorry, Mr. Matthews, but with this evidence, the school cannot overlook these offenses any longer." Suddenly, stripped of his usual confidence, Mr. Matthews turned to his son, disappointment and anger in his eyes. "Jake, is this what you've done?" Jake remained silent, his face pale with shame. He wouldn't meet his father's gaze or Alicia's. Mr. Matthews sank back into his chair, his shoulders slumping in exhaustion and helplessness. At that moment it dawned on him that neither money nor influence could hide or excuse his son's wrongdoing. Alicia stepped forward, her tone still firm but compassionate. "Mr. Matthews, I'm not here to punish Jake for the sake of punishment. I want him to understand the consequences of his actions. and to ensure no other student has to suffer as his victims have. I suggest he take full responsibility, publicly apologize to those he's hurt, participate in counseling, and complete community service to make reparations." For a long moment, Mr. Matthews was silent. Finally, his voice softened, almost to a plea. I apologize for my son's disgraceful behavior. Miss Carter, I accept your proposal. Jake will be held accountable, I assure you. This will never happen again." Jake bowed his head, tears brimming in his eyes for the first time, genuine remorse finally visible. Alicia knew this was only the beginning, but she also knew she had done something profoundly important, stood up to power with integrity and courage. As Alicia stepped out of the principal's office, her eyes shone with relief and confidence. She had won a hard-fought battle, not just for herself, but for every vulnerable student who had suffered in silence at Jefferson High. Today, truth and bravery triumphed over wealth and influence. And that, Alicia Carter realized, was the greatest victory of her career. That afternoon, as Richard Matthews drove away from the school in uncharacteristic silence, Alicia felt the tension in her chest finally begin to ease. She knew she'd reached the most pivotal moment since stepping foot into Jefferson High, when one small, courageous voice truly overcame power and oppression for the first time. The very next day, the school announced its official decision. Jake Matthews, Dylan Brooks, and Ethan Lee would be suspended for a period, required to attend intensive counseling sessions, perform community service, and, most importantly, write personal apology letters to each person they'd harmed. At first, Jake erupted in fury, feeling utterly humiliated at having to pen individual apologies. But this time, Richard Matthews wouldn't let his son shirk responsibility. In the quiet of the school library, under the watchful eyes of his father and a counselor, Jake spent hours confronting each of his transgressions and recalling every cruel deed. His apologies, initially awkward and reluctant, gradually became genuine, filled with a remorse he'd never shown before. Dylan, who'd always relied on brute strength, now faced grueling afternoons of community service, repairing and repainting old classrooms and tidying the school grounds. As he scrubbed graffiti from the walls, he began to realize that the stains he'd left on other people's hearts weren't so easily erased. Ethan, with his sharp mind and icy demeanor, sat through hours-long therapy sessions. At first, he feigned composure, but heartfelt conversations with his psychologist peeled away the carefully constructed mask. Ethan slowly recognized that intelligence and cunning aren't meant for manipulation, but for honest contributions that build trust within a community. While the three boys learned hard lessons in accountability and growth, Alicia saw an opportunity to foster a genuinely safe, confident environment for every student. She proposed, and quickly launched, Jefferson High's first-ever self-defense club, a space where all students, regardless of size or background, could discover their own strength and self-belief. Every Thursday afternoon, the school's small gym buzzed with determined energy. Under Alicia's attentive guidance, students practiced basic self-defense moves, learned how to stay calm and think clearly in dangerous situations, and, most importantly, understood that the greatest power lies within, in courage and emotional control. Students who'd once been bullied, like Jessica Parker, Marcus Johnson, and Maria Gonzalez, grew noticeably stronger. Jessica, long insecure about her weight, now stood proudly at the front of the class, leading peers through techniques she'd mastered. Marcus no longer trembled or avoided eye contact. Instead, he confidently led group exercises and encouraged his classmates. The Self-Defense Club quickly became a beacon of meaningful change at Jefferson High. It wasn't merely a place to learn martial arts. It was a haven for healing old wounds, restoring self-esteem, and reclaiming the dignity that so many had silently lost. Even Alicia's colleagues, once skeptical of her methods, now looked at her with deep respect and admiration. They realized her impact went far beyond standing up to 3 bullies. She had rekindled the school's faith in fairness and kindness. One late afternoon after practice, Jessica approached Alicia with tears glistening in her eyes. "Miss Carter, I've never felt this strong and confident before. Thank you for everything you've done for us." Alicia smiled warmly and gently took Jessica's hands. "Jessica, I should be the one thanking you. You and your classmates have shown me that courage and kindness live in every one of us. I only helped you find it." As Jessica rejoined her friends, Alicia looked around the gym, feeling her heart soar. She knew this was just the beginning, but it was the clearest sign yet that Jefferson High was becoming the kind of place where every student is respected and safe, where everyone can find the strength to rise and believe in themselves. In that moment, Alicia understood that every hardship, every challenge, every fierce battle she'd faced here had been worth it. Because she was more than just a teacher, she was the catalyst for a lasting, meaningful transformation in this small community. The soft spring sunlight filtered through the classroom windows, bathing the room in a peaceful glow, so different from the tense atmosphere that had once gripped Jefferson High. Alicia had just finished leading the self-defense club practice and watched her students leave with bright smiles. A sense of calm washed over her, one she never thought she'd feel again. Then, unexpectedly, Jake Matthews appeared quietly in the doorway. He stood there hesitating, none of his old arrogance or defiance remaining. Instead, his eyes held genuine remorse and a hint of uncertainty. After a moment's pause, he stepped toward Alicia, eyes cast to the floor as he spoke in a trembling voice. "Miss Carter, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now, but there's something I've been holding inside for far too long." Alicia regarded him gently, sensing the sincerity in every word and gesture from the student who had once caused so much pain. Jake took a deep breath, lifted his gaze, and continued, his voice filled with regret. "I want to apologize to you. Truly apologize. I thought my father's power and influence could get me out of anything, but I was wrong. You showed me that real strength is owning up to your mistakes and facing them." Alicia listened quietly, each word of Jake's acting like a salve on old wounds. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder and said warmly, "Jake, acknowledging your mistakes today is the first step toward true growth. I believe you can change." After that conversation, Jake stepped up to lead the school's anti-bullying initiative. At first, many students doubted his sincerity, thinking it was another stunt. But Jake persisted. He organized workshops, spoke openly about his own wrongdoings, and shared his painful experiences to help others understand the harm of bullying and school violence. Witnessing his genuine efforts, the student body gradually put their faith in him. Jake didn't just transform himself, he empowered vulnerable classmates to find their own courage and stand against abuse. Step by step, he became a living symbol of true repentance and the bravery it takes to make amends. Meanwhile, Dylan Brooks, who once believed muscle solved everything, found a completely different path to heal his own inner wounds. He began spending hours in the school library, immersing himself in books he had always dismissed as boring. Noticing Dylan's newfound talent for expressing emotion through writing, his English teacher encouraged him to put his deepest thoughts on paper. Dylan's stories brimmed with the bitter truths of his past. A boy who used violence to mask his loneliness and pain. He discovered that literature could heal the deepest wounds and force him to confront his past. One day, trembling, he handed Alicia his first manuscript, eyes brimming with emotion. "Miss Carter, this is everything I've never dared say out loud. I wrote it so you'd know how truly sorry I am." Alicia read Dylan's pages with her heart swelling. She saw his genuine transformation, not just in his actions but in his mind and heart. Dylan's powerful memoirs soon spread throughout the school, inspiring many other troubled students to seek real repentance. As for Ethan Lee, the sharpest, most calculating member of the trio, he too discovered a new path. After intense therapy sessions, Ethan realized his intellect wasn't meant for manipulation, but for tackling life's challenges with honesty and integrity. He joined the school debate team, where razor-sharp reasoning and respectful persuasion were the keys to victory. Ethan quickly shone in competition, using his logic and compelling arguments to win tournaments, but this time with complete honesty and respect for his opponents. During debates, Alicia would watch him stand confidently before a crowd, his arguments clear and powerful, devoid of any past underhanded tactics. One afternoon, Ethan approached Alicia with heartfelt sincerity. "Miss Carter, thank you for not giving up on us. I used to think intelligence meant controlling others, but you taught me that real wisdom goes hand in hand with respect and responsibility." Seeing these three, once the school's greatest tormentors, now truly grown, Alicia felt profound joy. Their transformations proved that even the most wayward hearts can find redemption and reclaim themselves. In that moment, Alicia knew her work went far beyond reforming the three worst bullies at Jefferson High. She had helped them discover the real power of courage, remorse, and the inner strength that lives within every person. The soft spring sunlight filtered through the classroom windows, bathing the room in a peaceful glow, so different from the tension that once weighed down Jefferson High for so long. Alicia had just finished a self-defense club session and watched her students leave with bright smiles. In that moment, she felt a calmness she never thought she'd find again. Seeing the profound transformations in each student she'd once confronted, Alicia realized that her battle hadn't merely been a fight between herself and a handful of bullies. It had been a journey about courage, faith, and the power of change within every person. As the final months of the school year approached, Alicia understood she was no longer alone. In every hallway, classroom, and on the gym floor, her story, of a new teacher finding her footing and growing into a living symbol of bravery, was being told with deep admiration. She had come to embody belief in justice, the courage to stand against wrongdoing, and the ability to turn pain into inner strength. Students who had endured bullying, Jessica Parker, Marcus Johnson, and Maria Gonzalez, now walked the halls with confidence, their eyes no longer downcast or fearful, but shining with self-worth. They'd learned from Alicia that true courage isn't hiding your wounds but facing them, speaking up for yourself and others. Even Jake Matthews, the boy who had once ruled the school through fear, became its most ardent champion of respect and empathy. He hosted regular assemblies, openly sharing his own mistakes to help classmates understand the harm of violence and bullying, and the importance of forgiveness and making amends. Alicia often saw Jake standing before his peers, voice trembling with emotion, yet overflowing with sincerity and gratitude as he spoke of her influence. "If it weren't for Miss Carter, I'd still be a bully, unaware of genuine remorse and the chance to change my life." Dylan Brooks also matured through the heartfelt stories he penned. His essays appeared in the school newspaper and inspired many students to see that real strength doesn't lie in muscle or force, but in honestly expressing the emotions inside. Every line Dylan wrote carried the imprint of his healing journey, showing his peers they were not alone in their own battles. Meanwhile, Ethan Lee, whose sharp mind and calculating nature once harmed others, found a new direction. After rigorous counseling, he realized his intelligence was meant not for manipulation, but for tackling life's challenges with integrity. He joined the debate team, where clear, respectful argumentation became his path to victory. Alicia would watch with pride as Ethan confidently addressed large audiences, his logic cutting, but always delivered with respect, leaving no trace of his former cunning ways. Alicia's colleagues at Jefferson High also embraced this wave of positive change. No longer feeling powerless or turning away when bullying arose, they grew stronger in protecting students, building a safe, healthy environment, and firmly rejecting any injustice. Alicia herself became a shining example of standing up for what's right, no matter the pressure. One afternoon, late in the school year, the principal formally honored Alicia before the entire student body. Standing at the center of the auditorium, his voice brimming with emotion, he declared, "Today, we honor someone who taught us our most important lesson, that it takes courage to fight for what's right. Ms. Carter has shown us that respect and kindness are the foundation of a strong community, and that anyone can become their own hero when they stand up to injustice." Thunderous applause filled the hall as every student and teacher turned to Alicia, who stood humbly, her face alight with joy. In that moment, she knew the hardships she had endured were more meaningful than ever. When the clapping died down, Alicia stepped forward, her voice steady but heartfelt. "I want you all to remember that the greatest changes begin with the smallest actions. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting even when you're afraid. I believe each of you can change the world, and you are the real legacy of everything I've tried to build here." The Self-Defense Club, the anti-bullying initiatives, Dylan's inspiring writing, Ethan's intellectual debates, and Jake's open confessions had become woven into Jefferson High's very culture. A new spirit, one of respect, empathy, and bravery, thrived in every heart, student and teacher alike. Watching her students stride confidently down the halls, their eyes bright with hope for the future, Alicia realized she had achieved her greatest goal as an educator. Her legacy wasn't a single victory over bullying and oppression, but a community that had learned to live with courage, honesty, and the determination to stand up for what's right, for themselves and each other. Alicia Carter's journey at Jefferson High shows us that courage and an unwavering belief in justice are the keys to overcoming injustice and transforming not only our own lives but the lives of everyone around us. What about you? Have you ever faced similar challenges, and how did you respond? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share this story to spread its positive message, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any more inspiring stories. Thank you for being with us. See you in the next video.